Hey, welcome to the Recovery 180 podcast. It's Glenn Dumontel, and today I've got Justin on board. And welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Glenn.
So you're hard at it at work, and you're taking a little time off to be able to tell us your story. And so let's just get right at it. Let's tell us kind of from the beginning. How did Justin get going in life, and how did that all start off?
Yeah, so I was technically born in Vancouver as a young child. I don't remember that. And then our family moved to Richmond.
Hmm.
And then, I'd say the years that I remember the most was so my dad was a builder. So we moved
Right,
around a lot.
right.
With construction, you build, you sell, you move. So I think I worked it out. We moved approximately every 2 years we would move. But yeah, so I grew up more in the White Rock, I would say South Surrey area for the majority of my life. And then the last, I'd say 15 years, 18 years in Langley.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
what was it like growing up? What was school like? Any challenges, or were you just that model student that always was at the front of the class and teachers loved?
Yeah, definitely not a model student, that's for sure. I went to a private school. Our parents sent us to Langley Christian School,
Right.
and yeah, I struggled as a student my whole life, and I think my older siblings not so much, and I think for me that was hard. I think they did their best. They tried to hire a lot of tutors and stuff to kind of keep me on track, but I'll just say basically I kind of scraped by.
Mm-hmm. So
Mhm.
did that put extra pressure on that you were at a Christian school than if you would have been in a like a regular
Yeah,
primary school?
I think back then it was a little bit more strict than it is now, right?
Right.
I'm one of the
Yeah.
guys that can still remember, the paddle or the strap being at the
Yeah.
school. That's how
Yeah.
old I'm dating
Yeah.
myself now.
Yeah.
But
Me too. Yeah. Hearing that drawer open up and you know that that's not a good thing.
yeah, I think there's good things and bad things to everything, and I just seem to always attract the bad things, and I don't know why. I kind of became rebellious. So really, I know we're here to talk about addiction, but by the
Hmm.
time I was in grade 7, that's when things kind of started going for me. I started experimenting with cigarettes, and
Hmm.
it kind of went from there.
So do you think that was something that was just you're trying to find a way to get accepted, or you're just trying to cover up some of your turmoil or struggles in school, or why did you think that that started at that point?
Yeah, I think you nailed the first one is accepted. As I've come through recovery and I've done my counseling, what I really found out that I could really go back to my childhood years and find that I was a people pleaser.
Right.
I didn't get a lot of affirmation from my dad. Actually, I got zero affirmation, and
Hmm.
I think that affected me as a young man. And I started to look for affirmation in other areas. And
Hmm.
it all started. I came home one day, and my older brother, I caught him and his buddies smoking,
Hmm.
and I think quickly for me to not tell on him, he kind of offered me one and to join
Yeah.
the group.
Yeah.
And for me as a young man, I looked up to my older brother, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to fit in and belong, and that's kind of how it started going at 12 years old. So
Well, and you thought he was staying under the radar, so you should be able to stay under the radar too.
exactly, yeah,
And you kind of
yeah,
held one another accountable because you weren't going to rat the other guy out.
that's right.
Yeah. So started off with cigarettes. Did you feel that you were starting to fit in then to the crowd at school, or was that giving you
Yeah,
some extra strength?
I think I kind of started to develop. A reputation or kind of started to, associate with people that were like-minded, kind of experimenting,
Hmm.
starting to smoke cigarettes. And, they say misery likes company, and it's true. You kind of find yourself, you know, uh, finding other people that are kind of going down the same path as you are. And that's kind of, the way it worked for me. So
Yeah. Well, and you don't feel so bad if you're not walking alone, right? If you're
that's
walking with
right.
somebody else. Yeah. So cigarettes were the launching pad.
It
And
was.
what did they launch you into from that point on?
Well, yeah, I mean, once you start that, I mean, it all kind of starts to come. So I think by the time I got to grade 8 was, I started, marijuana was introduced to me, alcohol was introduced to me,
Hmm.
and then it just grew. It kept growing from there. So, by the time I graduated high school, I would say I was already a borderline alcoholic and smoking marijuana every day and cigarettes and kind of developed my reputation. And I figured, well, I guess this is it. This is who I am. So,
Hmm.
mhm.
So was it affecting your relationship with your parents at all, or were they even aware of it?
Oh yeah, they knew I was smoking and drinking, and I it definitely affected the relationship for sure. It was, tumultuous at times, and obviously from their standpoint, no one wants to see their kid go down the wrong track, but I think it got to a point where they knew like they couldn't even control me anymore.
Hmm.
So,
So what did they think the solution was, or did they have a solution or suggestion for you, or did they just let you go?
I don't know if I mean, I think for them, they had a lot of, conversations with me. Usually they weren't good conversations. They were usually
Hmm.
heated and, why are you doing this? And, so they weren't really constructive conversations.
So how did you answer that question when they said, "Why are you doing this?" How did you answer that if you remember? Because I'm sure you had at that age, we all had really good excuses.
Yeah, I can't, to be honest, I can't really remember how those conversations went. I think one thing I'd find is, my dad he wasn't a guy of words. So usually if he found a pack of cigarettes or my mom would find a pack of cigarettes, they just take them away and they wouldn't even say anything.
Right, right.
Well, I'd find out where they stashed them and then I'd just go. So
Yeah.
there weren't a ton of conversations, to be honest. I think,
Okay.
you know, um,
So that made it probably easier for you to move on and to continue
yeah.
because you really weren't challenged or put on the spot or embarrassed in any way. And so that was almost easier probably for you to move on.
Yeah, I think I was challenged in the very beginning, but it just didn't there was no fruit from those conversations. So I think they kind of almost gave up in a way, I would say.
Yeah. So what did the next few years look like then? From you got out of high school, you were more popular than when you went in.
hmm
Um, did you feel that you left high school and you're ready to take on the world, or what was your mindset at that point?
Yeah, so I found a job, and then me and a few buddies saved up for about a year, and then we went and traveled Europe for about 6 months.
Mm,
And that was great a life experience. Wasn't in a if I could do it over again sober, I would.
yeah, yeah.
So, we weren't there to see any fancy sculptures. We were there to have fun and travel the world. So I did that. And then I started going to university. Actually, I went to Trinity Western University for about a year and a half. And I think my parents really were trying to say, you got to do something, right? And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think that was another thing that really frustrated me is I wasn't really good at anything.
Hmm.
And that was hard for me because my siblings were overachieving and they had direction for their life. And here I was feeling kind of like a black sheep and spinning my wheels. So, I didn't really even take education seriously where I kind of dropped out. And then my dad said, well, if you're not going to go to school, you can come work for me. So I started I started working with him in construction and even that kind of blew up because, my father and I didn't really get along and
Hmm.
um I think I did the job well, but yeah, that kind of blew up as well. So
So that was kind of he probably looked at that as sort of a temporary fix. Maybe that can. It wasn't that he was necessarily trying to rebuild your relationship. He was just trying to keep you on track with something, right?
yeah, I think he was trying to give me an opportunity to succeed and find a career. But obviously, I mean, good on him for providing. He gave me a lot of opportunities to succeed that way. But I just wasn't mature enough,
Hmm.
spiritually, mentally at the time where I couldn't even I look back at it and sometimes I'm like, man, I could have actually built a really strong career for myself, but
Yeah, yeah.
unfortunately, but I am where I am today and God's worked it all out. So that's the beauty of it. So
So were you using like drugs and alcohol while you were working with your dad
yeah,
and while you were at university at Trinity Western
yeah,
in that? And
yeah.
so,
By the time I was working for my father, I was drinking every night. I
mhm,
would show up to the job site hungover and
yeah.
that was my life, rinse and repeat. And then, I moved to Chilliwack. We started building out there. I didn't have any friends out there, but I lived right by a bar, a pub.
Mm.
So, I'd go there every night, and that's where I started to meet some new friends that weren't good at all for me, and then it just got worse.
Mm.
Cocaine, ecstasy, all that kind of stuff started to be
Yeah.
introduced. Yeah.
So did you start having thoughts along the way every once in a while that, hey, this isn't, something's not right here? Like, were you starting to feel that then along that path or?
Yeah, I think so. I think, especially when you wake up the next morning and you did things you vaguely remember and I remember thinking and having those conversations of like, what am I doing? Like, how do I keep this under control or turn it around? But it just got worse because my alcoholism was just controlling me. That was
Mhm.
my main addiction. I was an alcoholic and
Yeah.
I just had to drink every day.
And so what started transpiring then? What started changing in your life? You went like that for how long then?
Oh boy. So, I think one of the biggest highlights in my life that I kind of reminded of is when I was 21, and that's just when I was working for my dad. I came home one weekend to visit some friends, and I got in a really bad car accident that
Mm.
night.
Hmm.
And a gentleman was killed. The other driver was killed. He pulled a U-turn in front of me at 1 in the morning, and that one really messed me up inside. I went to a dark place after that. I don't even know how to comprehend it. It haunted me.
Hmm.
My parents tried to send me to a counselor to talk about it, but I just buried it. And then after that is when my drinking and drug abuse I just started to numb everything for the next, actually, I met with Jason Roberts shortly after that. My family introduced me to. I remembered him. I grew up with him. Our families kind of knew each other, and I remember meeting him at 21 years old. I was also really involved with crystal meth at that time, and a girl I was hanging around with. She introduced me to it, and then she ended up going to rehab. So things were spiraling out of control. And I remember meeting with Jason, and he said, "Hey, there's this farm called Wagner Hills Farm. You should go there." And at the time, 21 years old, I was just figured I was invincible, and I'll turn it around. But little did I know, 8 years later, at 29 years old, I'd wind up at Wagner Hills. So I
Hmm.
kind of went for a longer stretch of a really dark period of drinking, and a lot of it was on the weekends with friends, but on the weekdays it was every night by myself, like
Hmm.
blackout drunk, and that was every day. And
So so when
yeah,
Jason approached you, was he a resident there, or was he working there at that point at Wagner Hills?
no,
Or
no, he was actually just freshly out of the program at that time. He
oh,
had
okay,
gone through it himself, and I think he had a year or two under his belt. And I knew he was doing well. I think he was working with CLA Church at the time, and
hmm,
I knew that I'd heard that he had turned his life around, heroin addiction. So, I was definitely interested in meeting with him and hearing that, but I just wasn't ready. I
hmm,
uh, I wasn't done yet.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's got to be your time, right? You
Yeah.
know. And so 8 years later, what transpired that you all of a sudden something clicked and whatever, and you decided it was time to get this thing fixed?
Well, what happened was it was the August long weekend. I went on a 72-hour drug and alcohol induced psychosis, basically.
Hmm.
I have very vague memories of it, but what happened was, is I guess I was calling people and I was, I guess, telling people that my best friend had committed suicide, and none of this happened. And I think
Hmm.
when I came out of it, I had people knocking on my door and phone calls saying, "What is going on?" Like
Hmm.
you. And then finally, what happened was, is a couple of close friends of mine, my parents knew I was an alcoholic, but they didn't know I was into cocaine. And finally
Right.
they came forward and they said, "Hey, I think you need to know the truth that, he's been going hard on cocaine now for over a year, and I think
Hmm.
it's taken a toll on him." So what happened was, is I had an intervention, like the TV show, and
Yep. Yep.
my mom and my sister had it. I clearly remember, I'll never forget it. They showed up at my door. They said, "Sit down and listen. We're going to talk to you." And they gave it to me for 30 minutes.
Hmm.
And what I took away from that was the hardest part is when my sister looked at me and said, I don't even want you to be around your niece and nephew anymore
Hmm.
because you're basically an embarrassment. I can't trust you. And hearing that, I remember just hearing that, and I had tears rolling down my cheeks just listening. And
Hmm.
I knew I'd hit rock bottom. Like
Hmm.
my sister doesn't even want her kids to be around me. And
Yep.
basically, what I heard from them, it's funny when I talked to them about this today. They say they didn't say it, but the way I heard it was get help or get lost. Like you're
Hmm.
done.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
all I had left was my family. Like I'd burned every bridge. And so finally, I was still working at the time. I was working for a casino. I was there for about 4 years. I'd worked my way up. I was a functioning addict.
Hmm.
How I did it, but what happened was is I quit my job and I showed up to Wagner Hills a week later. I knew this was that something had to change, and I was done. I was tired, Glenn.
Hmm. Hmm.
So tired of this. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. So
So did
then
it, so when your sister and your mom showed up and you had that conversation, did that almost feel like a little bit of a relief? Like
I
almost like
was,
it's almost like a rescue?
yeah, I think so. Yeah, when I look back at it, yeah, I think it was. I think, and I was ready to kind of wave the white flag. Like
Hmm.
it was, it was a perfect storm. It just worked out the way it did, and the timing was good.
Hmm.
And I'm glad that they put in, it doesn't work. The intervention doesn't work for everyone, but the situation that it did for me, it did work. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
And so then how did your recovery begin?
Yeah. So I checked in at Wagner Hills on August 8th, 2008. And I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't want to go. I think no one wants to go to rehab, but I knew I needed to go there.
So had you detoxed before you went? Because
No.
you were using pretty heavy. So
Yeah, and so what they did is they moved me out of my place and I stayed at my parents' house for a week before I went in. So they wouldn't let me leave the house. They kind of monitored me. I was pretty lucky. My withdrawal wasn't that bad. I had the shakes and I'd get pains in my side of my stomach, but
mhm.
now that I work in the industry, you see some guys, it can be fatal. So I'm
Yeah,
lucky. I didn't drink very hard alcohol. I was a beer drinker. So
yeah.
I think the detox is much worse for guys who drink hard liquor that way.
Hmm. Oh,
So I
okay.
had a little bit easier that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you walked in the door of Wagner Hills thinking, I need to be here, but I don't want to be here.
Yeah. I
So
remember.
how did those first few days? I know I always ask guys that, when I talk to them out there, like, some guys that first night sleep great, because they feel they're starting their freedom. And then others are just like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this.
Yeah,
How is it for you?
I had a lot of questions in my mind. I probably left 100 times in my brain.
Yeah.
I the first month I stayed down. Back then they called it the Glen Valley House, where is new intakes would all live in the same house together.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I basically I basically was like I was thinking in my brain, either they're going to put me up in the main program or I'm going to leave. And luckily, I found out like the next day that, hey, they accepted me to go into the 1 year program. So I moved up to the 1 year program, but it was humbling. Like it was a little bit different atmosphere back then. I remember my first guy across the room from me in the house I was living in. I went to introduce myself, a new guy, wanted to fit in again, people pleaser,
Yeah. Yeah.
wanted to be liked. And he looked at me and he was an old biker gang guy. And he looked at me and he said, don't talk to me until you've been here for 3 months. And he turned around and I was like, where am I?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
is going on? But and I had a lot of great interactions too. A neighbor beside me, he came over and introduced, so he was friendly. But there was a lot of more rough characters back then. We had a lot of guys coming out of prison, so
Right. Right.
atmosphere felt a little bit more heavy, a
Mhm.
bit. So
So did that being in an atmosphere though where you had other people that were going through addiction recovery, did that feel better for you? Did you feel like you're in a community that understands
yeah,
finally?
it did help. I think I felt I was around people that were struggling with the same things that I was, and as I heard in like group sharing, I'd hear other guys share and I'd be like, okay, I'd kind of nod my head like, yeah, like, yeah, I've thought about suicide, I've cried myself to sleep at night wanting to die. And, you start to hear these stories of like, oh, okay, I'm not alone. Like there are
Yeah.
other people that are actually dealing with that. So yeah, in
Yeah.
that aspect, it did help. I found a community of like, okay, we're all in this together kind of. So
Hmm. So
mhm,
how did that so you stayed for the 1 year program?
I did.
And how did I'm assuming, like you mentioned, you had times in there where the 3 month, the 6 month, whatever, I'm like, I think I'm done. I want to leave. Like
Yeah.
what made you stay?
So that's great. I had a plan in my head. I knew it was a 1 year program. You had to sign
Mhm.
on the dotted line, but my plan was to leave after 5.5 months. I didn't want to be away for Christmas.
Right.
Um, as crazy as it sounds, that was important to me, and I figured, okay, I'm gonna put in some solid time, and then I'm gonna be ready to go. And I remember at that beginning of December, I was sitting at the edge of my bed, and I was running through this scenario in my head that I had planned, and I was looking at my suitcase, and all I could think about was going and drinking. And I had I don't know if you want to call it a coming to Jesus moment, but I was like, I can't go. I'm not ready. And I don't
Hmm.
want to do this again. I'm done. I'm tired. So I decided to stay and finish the year. And I'm glad I did because, you know, um, a lot of the light bulb moments didn't go off for me till about 8 months in the program is when I really began to learn a lot about myself.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have learned that if I left early. So I'm glad I stuck it out. It was hard. It was not easy, and but man, I started to cling to faith. I started to open up to Him, and I remember I gave my life to back to Jesus. I said, "Man, if you can do better with my life, it's yours."
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, God, kill me or fix me. And you hear a lot of those guys say the same prayers, and He fixed me. When
Yeah.
I gave my life to Him, something changed inside. Something literally changed inside that I can't describe to anyone today because it was only for me. And I think for a millisecond, He touched me. He showed me He was real, and I was like, okay,
Hmm.
okay, I'm gonna do this.
Well, and I think that's very common for a lot of guys. And I think that I have heard from a lot of guys that have gone through programs where it wasn't faith based and felt that they were missing something.
Mhm.
And I know that the guys that I know that have come through the Wagner Hills program that have grasped onto God have really felt that they've got security. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean recovery's over,
yeah.
but there's been some really good security there. So yeah, so I mean so it got way better for you, and you started getting pretty excited about it. I'm sure you were starting to your brain was starting to clear up, and you were starting to think right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how did that process change you while you were there with family, with your family relationships and stuff?
Yeah, it's amazing when you get sober, your relationships get a lot better. And I started to build good, solid relationships with my family again. And I think they started to say, "Oh wow, like maybe he is turning the corner and he's doing well. I'm looking better. I'm talking better. My brain's wired on better. The body's pretty resilient in a way where it can heal itself if you give it time. And then with the whole spiritual component added to that
Hmm.
is really I began to get a vision for my life that I never had before. And so when I graduated, I got accepted to go into a Bible college to do some counseling. I started attending a church right away. I remember I kicked down the door of this pastor's. I found a place in Langley called Southgate Church,
Hmm.
and I was introduced to the pastor, and I said, "Listen, this is my story. I need to get involved in your church and I'll do whatever you have available." And so he introduced me to some guys, and I still talk to some of them today. And they took me under their wing, and I was started in volunteering for they had a youth drop-in center. I started volunteering. I'd go for prayer meetings. I joined a life group. I was volunteering on Friday nights to help youth group. I was the oldest guy there, but I
Hmm.
just had to do something. And the church was a huge factor in my recovery. I started to build a community around me
Hmm.
that was healthy and supportive, and I began to build new friendships, and it really helped launch me.
Well, and I've heard it said that it's important when you come out of recovery to have those connecting points, at least six connecting points,
Yeah.
and so that became your community, and you had a number of connecting points that do you feel those are the ones that really held you on the straight and narrow after? Because I'm sure that big step is when you leave the farm, and you're back into real life when there's some trauma or there's some bumps along the way. What is it that's keeping you, that's holding you on the road?
Yeah, I mean, my best friend overdosed about a year after I got out, and my life was changing. And that one rocked me.
Hmm.
That one, I think my whole family and friends were really worried about me, and
Hmm.
it's even hard for me to talk about now.
So did
Uh,
it rock you in a way that you felt you may use again?
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, the thoughts came back, and but I had a community around me that just came around me,
Hmm.
and they loved me, and they heard me, and they supported me, and man, if I didn't have that,
Well,
I
and
would
that's what
be
I,
done.
yeah, I worry about people that graduate through programs and don't connect with a church and a Bible study group and a small group and have that. And so, I mean, you're an example of that, and you're able to share that with the guys that are coming through that program. And so, you went on back to university then,
Yeah.
did, and then did you complete your degree then, or?
Yeah, so I went to the College. I got a diploma in counseling, and then I went right into Trinity Western. Funny, full circle. I dropped
Yeah,
out. I always
yeah,
laugh. I have probably one of the longest graduation stories. And so I finished I did my BA in leadership at Trinity Western, and that time I was also working at Recovery Church. Jason had brought me on. It was 2009, 2010. Recovery Church was just taken off, and
hmm,
was a great thing to be involved with too. And then after that, Jason hired me on to come work at Wagner Hills. He said, "I want you to be my fundraiser," and I kind of remember laughing, thinking, "Man, I've never fundraised a day in my life."
yeah,
And if you know Jason, he'll be like, "I prayed about it," and he's like, "You're my guy." So I'm like,
yeah,
"Okay."
yeah.
So, I've had a long lasting relationship with Jason for, the past 20 years, and we've worked very close together. And so I worked with him at Recovery Church. I came here and worked at Wagner Hills, and then I got recruited out of here, 7, 8 years ago. Trinity Western recruited me, and I really,
Isn't that ironic?
it is very ironic. The funny thing is, I can share really, really quickly. My panel interview was, I shared my testimony,
Yeah.
and there was one guy in the panel who said, like, what is this guy doing here? Why would we even hire this guy? This is a risk. And so they actually made me meet with President Bob Kuhn the next
Hmm.
day. And he was the one making the deciding factor. And I remember asking someone, I'm like, do interviewees go to meet President Bob Kuhn? They're like, no. So I knew right away. I'm like, and so I remember sitting in the chair inside President Kuhn's outside his office, waiting him for to call me in. And I remember praying about it. I said, you know what? I'm not going to change my story.
Hmm.
My story is my story. And if they want to hire me, great. If they don't, I don't care. I work at Wagner Hills. I still got a great job. So
Yeah.
I shared, I sat down with Bob Kuhn for about an hour, and I shared my story. And next thing you know, they offered me the job the next day. So, when he retired, I actually thanked him and his wife. I said, he took a big chance on me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you know what? That helped me too. Like, and when you're helping people in recovery, you are taking a chance. There's a chance they may relapse, but there's a chance that the thing you're offering them also might really help them succeed in life. So I'm very grateful for the people that came around me and helped me that way.
Well, and I'm assuming that he saw your true transformation, spiritual transformation from the beginning until the end and to where you
Yeah,
are today. And
yeah.
I mean, he's not only was he trusting you, but he was trusting God with this because, he felt that something special had happened to you. So you're at Trinity for a while. We've got a few minutes left, about five
Yeah.
minutes left, but you're at Trinity, and then all of a sudden something changes, and you're gone from Trinity, and you're back to Wagner Hills. Like, how did
Yeah,
that all?
I
How
was
did
there
that?
for I was there for 5 years, and I loved it. I built a great relationships there, and I still love that community. I still talk to people there.
Hmm.
It was around COVID. I remember Jason had we him and I still connected all the time, and he said, "Hey, I'm looking to hire a campus director for our men's facility, and is
Hmm.
that something you'd be interested in?" And I figured, I don't think so. And he says, well, I'll just think about it. And then, 6 months later, he asked me, and when COVID hit, something changed where I kind of felt like I was building my own thing, and I needed to come back to some grassroots, something I was missing, and that was working with people in addiction.
Hmm.
Just loved it, and I think that was a part that was missing. And so when Jason and I met with again, like he did the worst sell job ever to bring me back. He says you're going to make less money. The benefits are worse than Trinity. Like he
Yeah.
basically, I remember him laughing, telling me this, but he says I would love to have you back. And I remember praying about it. And then my wife and I was very aware of this. And I remember one day I was sitting around the kitchen table and I looked at her and I said, I think I'm supposed to go back. She
Mm-hmm.
looked at me and she says, can we afford it? And I said, not really,
No, no.
not really,
Yeah.
but I know God's going to take care of me because He's opened every door along the way. I've
Yeah.
trusted in His plan. I haven't forced it, and He has taken care of me. So anyway, I accepted the job. I came back here, and then a few years ago, they made me associate executive director. And Jason and I work so close together, and I love it. I love what I do. I wouldn't do anything else in the world.
Isn't that just it's interesting that he was the one that spoke to you years earlier
Yeah,
about getting clean,
yeah.
and now you're working side by side. Are you feeling that this has been an opportunity for you to give back
Oh, for
into
sure.
the lives of others with addiction?
Yeah, for sure. But it also helps me too.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's a give take, and it inspires my faith to see guys coming through and are reminding me of when I went through. And then yeah, God, I hope God uses me when I speak to guys. I try to build trusting, honest, transparent relationships with them, and if I can help a guy in his recovery, man, then
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad I could do that. So, but we're a big team here. We've got a lot of staff and we all play different roles and we all sew into their lives differently. And so it's really a team effort for sure.
Well, it's I've seen you in action, and I think you're doing a great job out there. And it takes the right kind of leaders to lead the rest of the team. And I think that you and Jason are doing a great job out there. And so, any passions or visions for the future for you? Have you got anything that you've been that's percolating inside your head as we kind of wind down here that you see yourself doing, or maybe a program that you're changing or anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, so far it's an exciting time at Wagner Hills. We got a lot of projects we're doing and are going to continue to do. So I know I know I'm here for a short season still, but even Jason and I talk about it a lot about, what does the future look like? What does transition look like?
Hmm.
Him and I are both guys that want to hand the baton off one day
Yep.
to young, great future leaders here. And I don't want to be a guy that holds on to something and tries to protect my space. So I'm excited about the future and I look forward to handing that baton off to the next generation. And that could be in the next 3 years or 5 years or I don't know, but I know I'm not worried about the future. I know God's got me totally taken care of. So
Well, way back when Helmut started Wagner Hills, he never probably expected that God was going to take it to this level, but he's been blessed to have some really great leaders like you guys come on board. And so I'm excited to come out there whenever I can. You guys got a great team. And so I just want to thank you, Justin, for sharing your story. I think that this is really important for people to be able to tune in, to be able to hear the stories of men and women that have gone through recovery and are continuing to work on that and are doing well. And with the God aspect, realizing that, God is an important part in changing all of our lives, no matter whether it's an addiction or just in everyday life. So thank you very much for taking time. Any last words I could give you? You're the guest. I can give you the last word.
I would say if you're listening and you're struggling in addiction, keep going. You never give up. And I would say if you don't know who God is, He knows who you are, and He loves you, and He wants a relationship with you, and He will pursue you to the end of the earth. And if you are open to having a relationship with Him, I'm telling you, it will change your life, and not just on this planet, but for eternally. And He's a good Father, and He loves us. And keep going. And if you ever need someone to talk to, give us a call. I will meet with you. I will meet you. I'll have a coffee with you, and I will help you in any way I can.
Great, great words. I can't top those words. Great way to end there, Justin. Thank you very much for being a guest on the Recovery 180 podcast, and look forward to connecting with you again.
Appreciate it, Glenn. Have a great day.
All right, thank you.